Number 1, the Ducks 9-0 on the season after a 38-17 win over Michigan. Georgia State's put at number 2. The Bulldogs are 7-1. They beat Florida 34-20. Ohio State up 1 spot this week to number 3. They're 7-1 after a 20-13 win at Penn State. Miami up 1 spot to number 4. The Hurricanes 9-0. They beat Duke 53-31. Texas up a spot. They were off on Saturday. The Longhorns are 7-1. Penn State down 3 spots this week to number 6. The Nittany Lions 7-1. Monday Night Football, the Kansas City Chiefs looking to remain undefeated as they take on Tampa Bay. Kansas City is 7-0. The Buccaneers 4-4.
Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
If you're not planning to come into Macy's this week, you're missing out because our Friends and Family Sale is happening now. What does that mean? It means when you use your coupon or Macy's card, you can take an extra 30% off, just like Friends and Family can. That's 30% off the latest trends, 30% off new arrivals, 30% off the best brands. It's just this week. It's just what you've been waiting for. And it's only at Macy's. Savings off regular and already reduced prices. Exclusions apply.
The 90s called. They said the Gordita Supreme is so back in the new $7 Lux Cravings box from Taco Bell. It's all looking fresh to death with the pillowy 90s Gordita Supreme alongside the beefy 5-layer burrito, double stacked taco, chips with nacho cheese sauce, and medium drink. All for just $7. It's your wallet's favorite cheesy crunchy combo here for a limited time. Grab yours and relive the decades only at Taco Bell. At participating Taco Bell stores for a limited time only. While supplies last. Contact store for price and participation, which varies. Drinks and speeds freezes. Tax extra.
No way football is playing in the fall and winter
because the hits don't hurt as much when you're numb. Get the lowdown on all the sports action coming up right here.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
We're live right here to start off a new week on FFC. That is Football Full Circle, all a part of the SportsGrid Radio Network and Sirius XM. He is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. He's the mastermind of the pigskin, and we'll look back on week number 9 of the Sunday slate around the National Football League. The opening Saturday in November, a chaotic Week 10 slate in college football, and we'll preview the ending of the opening half of this 2024 NFL season. That's Monday night in Kansas City between the Chiefs and the Buccaneers. Lisi guy, what a Sunday it was around the NFL. 9 weeks in, 9 weeks more to go after the conclusion of Monday night. A ton to discuss here at the halfway point of this NFL campaign.
It is a lot to discuss, and we saw teams yesterday start to really solidify themselves as the top in their respective conferences, the AFC and the NFC respectively. We saw some teams really prove that they're not just a one-hit wonder or an aberration. Teams like the Washington Commanders have already exceeded their preseason win total. They're challenging for a division title. And how about Saquon Barkley? I know it's an individual effort, but that play yesterday against Jacksonville, hurdling over a defender, is probably one of the best NFL type of plays that we might have seen from a running back in all of the past 40 or 50 seasons, Ben.
Over a Jags defender backwards was that hurdle from Saquon Barkley. Some people were questioning if we would see points on Sunday in Philadelphia. Not Joe Lisi. He said it goes over between the Eagles and the Jaguars. But Lisi, as we look back on Sunday, some breaking news on this Monday morning that ties in to a result on Sunday. The New Orleans Saints had Derek Carr back under center in Charlotte yesterday against the Panthers. Because of that, New Orleans booked as a full touchdown favorite on the road against a 1-win Carolina team that was also 1-7 against the number this year, booked as a dog in all 8. And yet the Panthers win despite Bryce Young throwing for less than 200 yards. Carolina victorious 23-22 outright as a 7-point underdog. And because of that, Joe, the 7-game losing skid continued for New Orleans. So after New Orleans drops its 7th consecutive game, bright and early on this Monday morning, the Saints make a much-needed change. they fired Dennis Allen midway through his third year as the head coach of the Big Easy.
Yeah, I mean, Mickey Loomis as the GM made some terrible moves. And, Dennis Allen was there for 7 straight years, but it's one thing to lose 7 straight games. It's another thing, Ben, to lose your identity, right? It would be okay, maybe, and you keep Dennis Allen to the end of the year if the defense was living up to expectations. But the defense now is one of the worst over the past few weeks. We saw Denver rip them, on the ground, through the air. We've seen, Bryce Young have somewhat of success, and Bryce Young has been completely inconsistent and ineffective throughout the regular season. And to see the Carolina Panthers put up 23 points on your defense, something needs to be done, right? We started the season talking about how great the Saints offense was, back-to-back 40-point efforts. This is a game changer. They're challengers in the NFC South, and they've completely fallen off a cliff. And Derek Carr and that offense, even now with him under center, have huge question marks. So we'll see how it plays out. But a change needed to be done sooner rather than later with the human anchor, Dennis Allen.
Yeah, Joe, you've been saying it for a while. There was some calling for his job at the end of last season. 9-8, sure, a winning record. The only season he has had a winning record now in his 6th as an NFL head coach. But their expectation was so much more than just being above 500 last year after the offseason acquisition of Derek Carr. They were the odds-on favorites entering the season to win the NFC South. Instead, it was the Buccaneers for a 3rd consecutive year. And, Joe, it's not just these 3 years as the head coach in New Orleans. It's the 7 prior as the defensive coordinator under Sean Payton. That means that Dennis Allen has really been in New Orleans for a decade. And this defense, atrocious. They've allowed 26-plus points in 5 of 7 on this losing skid. And if the Carolina Panthers are scoring 23 and Bryce Young is throwing for less than 150 yards, it's as bad as it gets. That's like in dog years, add on 7 and maybe more. That is how bad things were for New Orleans, a team that is just 2-7 on this 7-game skid with only a single cover in this 7-game losing streak. I don't think it's just going to be Dennis Allen. I think there needs to be some tough decisions made for general manager Mickey Loomis. The Saints have been in this will they, won't they rebuild weird limbo area for the last 4 or 5 years. It has led Joe to mediocre football, and now it seems to be ripping apart at the seams.
Yeah, and think about the talent that they even have on the defensive side of the ball. Forget the offensive side of the ball right now, right? I mean, Alvin Kamara is not the same running back. Chris Olave hasn't lived up to expectations, has dealt with injuries over the past couple of seasons. But now you have an aging defense. DeMario Davis is in his 30s. I believe he's 35. He's been the heart and soul of that. Tyrann Honey Badger Mathieu, he's in his 30s. I mean, there's aging veterans on the defensive side of the ball. They haven't addressed it in the NFL draft. Their draft picks, they've swung and missed a majority of those selections, and they're not plug-and-play type of players. So what do you do now? Now you have major question marks. You're from an NFL cap perspective, I think they're the highest, right? I mean, aren't they from just an NFL cap perspective? There's not even a close. It's like $40 million from them to the second best team. So, I mean, they're completely in disarray. You have to clean shop. It's a major rebuild any way you look at it.
Yeah.
And you know what? Quite frankly, this should have been done 2 or 3 years ago, Ben.
Yeah, it should have, Joe. So elsewhere around the NFL, the Saints lose to the Panthers, one of the more stunning upsets of Sunday. Joe, one of the best teams in the National Football League, though, maybe the best, that's the Detroit Lions. They go into Lambeau on a sloppy Sunday when all that is said about Jared Goff and Detroit, can they win outdoors and in the elements? They didn't just win. They didn't just cover. They dominated the Green Bay Packers inside Lambeau Field. 24-14, Detroit wins and covers as a 2.5-point road favorite against Jordan Love and Green Bay. Total of 47.5 stays under. Joe, the Lions are now 7-1. They have covered in all 7 victories this year. The Chiefs are the only remaining undefeated team. They play the Buccaneers on Monday night in Arrowhead. And the Chiefs have the pedigree as the 2-time reigning Super Bowl champs. But at this moment, the best team in the NFL, it might be Detroit.
It is, offensively and defensively. And I understand Aiden Hutchinson is not there, and Josh Jacobs did rush for over 90 yards in that matchup, but they completely made Green Bay's offense one-dimensional. They jumped up yet again. And in the slop, Jared Goff, 24, 26 incompletions over the last 6 weeks of the regular season. That is phenomenal. That's an MVP caliber type of offense right now. And I know we brought it up on Pro Football Today. Would you make a move if they win, lose? I wouldn't change a thing. From a locker room perspective and continuity, Ben, I think they're hitting on all cylinders. They could score with anybody, and the defense is good enough. I mean, this is the most complete team, in my opinion, outside of Kansas City in the NFC. They're deserving of the top billing. They're playing like that. There's no emotional letdown after losing an NFC championship game. They are playing like they're a sub-500 team fighting for a playoff berth, and that's what you want to see each and every week. Dan Campbell has done a fantastic job motivating this team.
Yeah, he has, Joe, and not just motivating them to win, but motivating them to cover. Detroit is now 44-18 against the number with Dan Campbell as its head coach since the start of 2021. That is a 71% cover percentage. Nobody else in the NFL is covering in even more than 61% of their games. Detroit 7-1 straight up and against the number this year, and Jared Goff is playing like an MVP. Plenty more around the Sunday slate next.
Ball is coming.
Don't look like an idiot at work. Know your stuff. Football and everything else.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Weather experts are keeping a close eye on a low-pressure system in the Western Caribbean that figures to impact the U.S. later this week, though to what extent remains uncertain.
With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg.
The system, now known as Potential Tropical Storm 18, prompted the governments of the Cayman Islands and Jamaica to issue a hurricane watch and tropical storm warning, respectively. AccuWeather said 18 may strengthen into a tropical storm today, earning the name Rafael. Unionized factory workers at Boeing are voting today whether to accept a contract offer or to continue their strike, which has lasted more than 7 weeks and shut down production of most Boeing passenger planes. A vote to ratify the contract would clear the way for the aerospace giant to resume airplane production and bring in much-needed cash. If members of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers vote for a third time to reject Boeing's offer, it would plunge the company into further financial peril and uncertainty.
I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Every day, Cintas service reps help businesses get ready for the workday. They provide freshly laundered workwear delivered every week. Mats, mops, restroom and cleaning supplies. First aid and safety products to help your employees stay safe. They even test and inspect fire extinguishers and emergency lights. Cintas helps keep your business running smoothly. See what Cintas can do for you. Visit Cintas.com.
Oh, I'm ready!
And get ready for the workday.
You ever try fixing your car and realize you're missing that one part? Yeah, been there. That's why eBay's my go-to. They've got millions of parts, guaranteed to fit. I'm talking brake pads for when yours have seen one too many miles of stop and go. Oil filters, because you don't mess around with your engine care. Even got this cold air intake on my watch list. I might just go for it. To keep the ride cool and your DIY streak hot. Find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things people love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Fall is almost here.
It's time to stow the lawnmower and get ready for all that glorious action coming your way. Stay tuned to SportsGrid for all the strategies, angles, and info you need to get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
So a huge NFC North divisional duel. The Lions come out on top 24-14, covering as a 2.5-point favorite in Green Bay. They're 7-1. The Packers fall to 6-3. Joe, Jordan Love has thrown an interception in all 7 games he has played this year. But with the INTs came a lot of touchdown passes in his first 5 games. Multiple TD passes in the first 5. He has not thrown a touchdown pass in the last 2, did not play the full game last week in Jacksonville, but his INT yesterday led to a Kirby Joseph pick 6 for Detroit to end out the half. The Lions didn't even put up more than 275 total yards and still won by double digits. Are you concerned at all about the Pack moving forward?
No, again, we talked about the Pack as well. The one concern I did have about the Pack moving forward was, are they rushing Jordan Love out there sooner rather than later just to win this game and run the risk of injuring him towards the end of the regular season where he's then done and can't make a playoff push? That is the biggest concern. I still believe that, Jordan Love is an above average quarterback. I believe in that offense. They can run it. They can throw it. They have multiple playmakers, and you see like their tight end, Tucker Kraft, getting involved over recent weeks. Didn't get that involved yesterday, but still, I still believe in Matt LaFleur and this team. The defense, I think, is above average. They've been opportunistic, and again, they ran into a team that is just as hot as anybody can be, hitting on all cylinders. And, that's not to say that, maybe Detroit punches themselves out. We talk about this in baseball. It happened with the Braves and multiple teams. When you're just dominating in the regular season, you want to save some of it for the playoffs. But right now, I still believe it's Detroit number one. I would put Philly number two, and I still would put Green Bay as the third best team in the conference, Ben. No concerns right now, but it's all due to the health of Jordan Love moving forward.
Green Bay plus 950 still to win the NFC. Their divisional price takes a big hit yesterday because the Packers have also lost the Vikings already this season. So still plus 950. The Lions, though, plus 240 to win the NFC. Now over $2 in front of the Niners. Detroit booked as the favorites to win the NFC Championship. Other teams in the NFC North. The Vikings hosting Indianapolis on Sunday Night Football. Minnesota, who started a perfect 5-0, one of the two remaining undefeated teams at the time alongside KC, then dropped two straight. Lacey guy back in the win column last night, overcoming 3 Sam Darnold turnovers to 3 second-half touchdown passes out of Sammy D as well. The Vikings beat the Indianapolis Colts, led by Joe Flacco, 21-13. Minnesota covers as a 5.5-point home favorite.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the defensive effort of Minnesota. And, entering that game, that defense had allowed back-to-back 30-point performances against Detroit and L.A., so I wanted to see that defense bounce back into form. And maybe the best recipe was a prototypical drop-back passer in Joe Flacco. Maybe it would have been different with AR and his mobility, right? Break and contain. But they got to Joe Flacco early and often, multiple blitz packages. Brian Flores did a fantastic job. They missed some field goals, both kickers did. But as long as Justin Jefferson's healthy and he's out there, he could take over a game, Ben. I mean, unbelievable performance yet again. And Darnold, again, you got to live with the high highs and the low lows. Yeah. He's not elite. But as long as he doesn't turn the football over, and I know he did that last night, if that defense plays the way it did yesterday, they're going to be right there to challenge for a potential playoff spot and maybe even challenge the likes of Green Bay and Detroit, respectively.
No offensive touchdowns allowed by Minnesota. Top 10 scoring defense in the NFL. Brian Flores really has coordinated a great unit there in the Twin Cities. It was a Kenny Moore scoop and score early in that second quarter. The only scoring we saw in the opening half. Justin Jefferson, 7 grabs for 137 yards. Joe, I'll just say this. I was actually leaning some points last night, over 46.5. If you're going to bring in Flacco, in bench and potentially forever stunt the development of a guy you spent the 4th overall pick on, that's Anthony Richardson, for 16 of 27 for $179 and an INT. You got to figure something else out. That is not what you bring him in there for. You let him throw a ton. Only 1 week, but Indianapolis now in 3 starts made this year with Joe Flacco, just 1 and 2. Lacey guy elsewhere around the NFL. Let's go to a marquee matchup in the NFC. The Cowboys needing to win a football game that they fail to do. You add injury to insult. Dallas loses Dak Prescott in the game with a hamstring injury, set to undergo an MRI on this Monday. The Cowboys, Joe, as a 3-point road dog in Atlanta, come up short. The Falcons win 27-21, covering as that 3-point home favorite.
Yeah, you lose Dak Prescott, but this is bigger, Ben. We talk about the mentality. It was back-to-back road games. They were 3-1 on the road heading into that game. And again, they just the mindset defensively. And I understand that you're minus, players. I get that. Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence. But you're still supposed to find ways. Put it this way. If, from the offensive perspective, if Matt LaFleur and some of the other guys like Kevin O'Connell can win with backups, right, at the quarterback position, which is the most important position in the NFL, Mike Zimmer and that defensive staff need to figure it out. And they don't have any answers right now. So their defense is absolutely pathetic. Doesn't matter what the offense does. They allowed 223 rushing a couple of weeks ago. They allowed Atlanta to move up and down the field. Again, it was a poor effort. And you know what? Mike McCarthy's dead man walking. He's not going to make it out unless they have a miraculous turnaround. And now with Dak Prescott hurt, just sell the Cowboys. They're not going anywhere.
The Cowboys have a huge game at home against the Eagles on Sunday, already booked as a 6.5-point home dog. Of course, the boys winless at the Star this year. And Joe, maybe because they were on the road and the Falcons had been so bad at home, just 1-4 ATS, you thought maybe Dallas had an opportunity. The final score being decided by a single score was actually even closer than it was. Cooper Rush tossing a late touchdown to Jalen Tolbert. The Cowboys 3-5. And if Dallas can't even be a winning, successful team in the regular season, of course, nothing lays ahead in the postseason either, where they have struggled tremendously. Plenty more from the Sunday slate. Week number 9 around the NFL comes your way up next on FFC.
There's smart.
And there's not smart.
Not smart is hope as a strategy. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Keep it here.
And win. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
In 1959, Ernie Banks wins his second consecutive NL MVP. Mr. Cub hit a career 512 home runs.
Back! It's a home run for Banks! Attaboy, Ernie!
For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
Researchers at the University of Science and Technology of China have developed a soft robotic medical finger that can be used clinically to check your pulse, perform examinations, and even check for abnormalities under the skin. This robotic finger can even type like a human hand, spelling out words.
Goosebumps.
The goal, an intelligent, dexterous hand attached to a sensorized, artificial, pneumatic, muscle-driven robotic arm, mimicking the unparalleled functions and fine manipulations currently only possible with actual human hands. Follow me at G Capalbo on X and stay tuned to the Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
Money line.
Tough season for our guys. Hope we bring Soto back. We come off pathetic. Donnie, they're like, man, he's probably going to end up a Met. A Met? A Met? Are you kidding me? Who are we? What's happened here? This is nuts.
Catch Moneyline with Donnie Rightside and Kevin Walsh. Weekdays, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific. On the SportsGrid Radio Network. Wherever you go,
there you are.
Download the SportsGrid mobile app and we'll be right there with you.
So now you can get the winning edge anywhere.
Even while the wife's talking to you.
If you've got an earbud.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on FFC, we recap the entirety of the Sunday slate in week number 9 around the NFL. All right, Lisi, guys, we keep looking at some of the most impactful games from Sunday. The Cowboys now 3-5 in a very precarious spot moving forward as a 6.5-point underdog this upcoming Sunday against the Philadelphia Eagles. Other spots, Joe, a number that stood out entering the week that you were not so hesitant about. Baltimore laying 9.5 against the Denver Broncos at home. The Ravens turned out to be the very right side. Baltimore blows out Denver 41-10 at home, easily covering as a 9.5 point favorite. Total of 46.5 goes over. Lamar Jackson throws 3 touchdowns, 2 of them to Zay Flowers. Derrick Henry back over the century mark, finding Pater twice as well. All Baltimore as the Ravens respond from having their 5-game win streak snapped by the Browns last Sunday with a huge blowout victory over the Broncos.
Yeah, I just thought it was a bad matchup. Not to take away from Bo Nix and what Sean Payton have built, but you look at some of the teams that they beat during that stretch, right? New Orleans, Carolina, inefficient type of offenses. They beat up on Las Vegas at home, and then they ran head on to the best offense statistically in the NFL entering week number 10, right? It was just amazing when you look at, what Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry and that offense had statistically. Just thought it was a bad matchup, right? We saw Derrick Henry score yet again. That defense, if Bo Nix can't challenge you over the top, then you just stack the box against Javonte Williams in the rushing attack, and you pin your ears back and you go, okay, kid, try and beat us. And that's exactly what Baltimore did. The turnover early on really set the stage for Baltimore to jump up early and just, force Denver from a coming from behind situation. And after that, Ben, it was after you play down to Las Vegas as a 9.5-point favorite, you went toe-to-toe with Washington, you lose on the road against Cleveland as a 9.5-point favorite, right? You had a lot to prove in terms of this matchup. We saw the fluctuation, 9.5, 8.5, back to 9.5. They just started fast and just dominated. That's what you should do if you're the Ravens, and they played a complete game yesterday afternoon.
Third game for the Flock this year, Lisi, laying more than a touchdown. They had lost outright in their first 2. You mentioned both the Raiders and the Browns, so a big win yesterday. Denver falls back to 5-4, just 3-3 ATS as an underdog this year. After starting 0-2, the Ravens have won 6 of their last 7. After starting 0-3, the Bengals have won 4 of their last 6. Cincinnati with very limited margin of error, Joe. No error yesterday, 41-24. They paced the Raiders in Cincy. Joe Burrow throws for more than 250 in 5, count them, 5 touchdown passes against Las Vegas. The Bengals cover as a 7.5-point favorite, winning 41-24 against Las Vegas.
Yeah, and we saw Mike Gesicki have a day. Everybody but Jamar Chase, right? And again, the one concern, and I like the Raiders with the points in that matchup, just because I wasn't sure what you were going to get from Cincinnati being winless at home. 0-4, were they going to step up or were they going to check out? Well, they stepped up just offensively and defensively. And let's not forget, Las Vegas, I think, is just a beaten-up football team. They covered against the Rams, had a very emotional game against Kansas City the week before at home. Rivalry game, they cover but don't win. And then they go on the road and get absolutely shellacked by Joe Burrow. If Joe Burrow could play like that, again, maybe they could get back into it. It's still an uphill battle, but that's a start. They still have a heartbeat. We'll see how this plays out over the next 6 or 7 weeks, Ben.
Listen, the AFC not nearly as competitive as we thought. Cincy's still minus 104 to see the postseason. Heavier price, minus 118 to miss the playoffs, but still a little bit of life for the Bengals. They just have to keep winning football games and doing so in a big way. Joe, there is no doubt that with the return of Tua Tagovailoa, the Miami Dolphins have looked better. They have scored more than 20 points in 2 consecutive weeks when they hadn't scored more than 20 in their opening 6 games of the year. But they have now lost back-to-back games, even with Tagovailoa back, on late field goals. Tyler Bass, 61-yarder with 5 seconds left in Buffalo to give the Bills a 30-27 win. Miami covers as a 5.5-point road dog, but now they fall to 2-6, Joe.
Yeah, it's not good. The season's over. And again, the defense is the major concern. We know they could score with anybody. That defense has no heartbeat right now, Ben.
Miami 7-11 against the spread as an underdog with Mike McDaniel, but just 3 outright wins. They needed that outright victory yesterday. They come up just a little bit short. Plenty more around the AFC of the Sunday slate. Next.
The winning edge.
You've got it.
But not everybody has it, because not everybody listens to us.
But we're working on that.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the SportsGrid Sports Flash. Shop Chuck Sanders.
The Final Four in the NASCAR Cup Series will race next Sunday at Phoenix. It'll be Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, Tyler Reddick, and William Byron racing for the title. Monday Night Football, the Chiefs looking to remain undefeated. They're 7-0, 3-0 at home. They take on the Buccaneers tonight at Arrowhead. Tampa Bay 4-4 overall, 2-1 away from home. Tight end Jared Wiley is out for the season. He's got a knee injury. Wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster will sit out tonight with a hamstring injury. Defensive end Mike Dana out with a pec injury, while cornerback Najee Johnson is out with a concussion. 3 players already listed out for Tampa Bay. Wide receiver Mike Evans has a hamstring injury. Defensive lineman Greg Gaines with a calf injury. And long snapper Evan Decker is out with a hamstring injury.
Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Lowe's honors our military community this Veterans Day and every day. To say thank you, verified military members, veterans, and their spouses get 10% off everyday purchases, plus free silver key status with My Lowe's Rewards. It's our way of showing our gratitude to the brave people who have and continue to serve our country. Learn more now at Lowes.com/military. 10% discount can't be combined with another offer. Exclusions, terms, and conditions apply. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at Lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
Wendy's breakfast burrito has an entire breakfast in every bite. Fresh cracked eggs, seasoned potatoes, American cheese, cheese sauce, and sausage or bacon. So the first bite is like fresh American cheese sauce. Bacon. And the second bite is like fresh American cheese sauce. Bacon. And the third bite, you get the idea. The boss of breakfast burritos, gotta be Wendy's.
Participating U.S. Wendy's during breakfast hours.
Days are getting cooler.
The shadows are getting longer.
You know what that means. It's football weather. So bundle up and keep it here for all the latest strategies and gridiron information.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC. Lisi Guy elsewhere around the AFC before we turn our attention to the other conference. Titans, Patriots, overtime. Cool. The Titans win 20-17. The Pats do cover as a 3.5-point underdog. Under 37.5. Drake May gave you a little something, throwing a touchdown pass as time expired in regulation to force the extra session. Nick Folk, a 25-yard field goal to win it for Tennessee. Elsewhere, Lisi Guy in Cleveland. It's the Jameis Winston experience, right? Throwing for more than 330 and 3 tuds in his first start for the Browns against the Ravens. Following week, a touchdown, but 3 interceptions against the Chargers. LA is cruising. On the ground yesterday, J.K. Dobbins, 85 yards, 2 scores. Justin Herbert playing clean, productive, and efficient football. The Chargers now 5-3, and Joe in 4 of 5 wins, under in 7 of 8 games, under. J.K. Dobbins has hit pay dirt in all 5 victories for the Bolts as well. The Chargers win 27-10, covering in Cleveland, laying just 1.5.
Yeah, I watched that whole game yesterday. That was my best bet on the show. I changed it from the Eagle game for K-Dubs. So, I watched. I will say,
he owes you one.
It's okay. I took it on the chin. The biggest takeaway for me with LA is the offense and the passing attack with Justin Herbert. We know the offensive line was productive running the football, but now the passing attack is coming on, right? Josh Palmer, what a huge performance, touchdown reception. Disley, an above-average tight end. And obviously now Quentin Johnson, what a huge touchdown catch. He came back in that lineup. If Justin Herbert could chuck for 250 a game like he's been doing basically, and now you run the football with J.K. Dobbins, that defense is athletic. Khalil Mack did get a little bit banged up towards the end of that matchup. Want to see the injury report this week, but they forced turnovers yet again. This was more about L.A. than it was Cleveland. You expected Jameis to come back down to earth, throws a critical pick 6 in the end zone early in the third quarter. That would have given me my total and the over, but what could you do, Ben? Cleveland right now dead and buried, L.A. fighting for a playoff spot.
Yeah, they certainly are, Joe. Minus 300 for the Bolts to see the postseason in Jim Harbaugh's first year. Again, this is Chargers football. Unders, 7 of 8. running it with success and taking some of the onus off Justin Herbert, who was sacked 6 times yesterday, but outside of that, pretty productive day for Los Angeles. Interconference matchup, Jags and the Eagles in Philadelphia. Joe, we talked about Saquon Barkley. The backwards hurdle, unheard of. He also had 199 scrimmage yards and 2 total touchdowns. And it's good that Saquon is such an athlete. And Jalen Hurts played clean football. And Devontae Smith made a wonderful touchdown grab because Nick Sirianni, multiple times throughout that game, tried to cost his own football team a win. The Eagles win 28-23. They do not cover because their coach is not the brightest. But they do get a big victory and improve to 6-2.
Now you're bashing Sirianni. Why? Because he's Italian or he's a goofball? Which one? I mean, come on now. Listen.
Wait. What was the second word?
A goofball.
Oh, goofball. I thought you said something Italian that was like a little bit more slanderous than that. All right, good enough. Certainly not because of his heritage. You know, I don't like to bash Italian head coaches alongside my guy, Joe Lisi, just because he refuses to take points against a lifeless Jacksonville team to give them some sort of life in a game they should have had none. Continue, Lisi.
He does it multiple. I will say, it didn't cost him yesterday, but it will cost him when he continuously makes boneheaded decisions, especially when you have to take points. I understand you believe in your offense, but there's a critical juncture that when it becomes like almost part of your DNA for your team, you're going to put your team at a disadvantage. We made the same assessment with Dan Campbell with the 2-point conversion last year on the road in Dallas, right? Multiple opportunities. He did it again in the playoff games against San Francisco. Hopefully these coaches learn that I have no problem being aggressive, but when the points are there, you have to take them in certain spots. Again, Jacksonville's a beaten down team. They made enough plays, but again, to have a 22-0 lead and not have the killer instinct to close it out and knock off your opponent, we've seen it time and time again with the Eagles.
Listen, a very questionable call as well. Saquon Barkley was not ruled down, and the ground then could force a fumble that led to a scoop and score for Jacksonville. Part of that is also a part of this conception, but the fact that Jacksonville even had a chance that Trevor Lawrence could drive them down the field to only be picked off by Nakobe Dean in the end zone, that's firmly on Nick Sirianni. Regardless, the Eagles have won 4 straight and are now 6-2 and feeling a lot better about how they are playing. Joe, 2 overtime games yesterday. We talked Titans-Patriots, Rams-Seahawks. Walk-off winner for L.A. in Seattle. Matthew Stafford connecting with Demarcus Robinson. 39-yard touchdown strike. Speaking of coaches making some interesting decisions, Mike McDonald and his Seattle team got the ball first, drove right down the field, decided to go for it on 4th and 1 instead of kicking what would have likely been a convertible field goal. They don't get it on that 4th down decision. L.A. gets the ball back and drives the length of the field to win it with a touchdown. So the field goal would not have mattered. I guess it would have just changed a little bit of momentum in that game. Regardless, Joe, the Rams have now won 3 straight. After winning twice in 5 days to resurrect their season, it's important for LA to keep winning. They're back to an even 500 at 4-4.
Yeah, and again, when they're healthy, I believe they're the best team in the division. You know, and you can make the argument that, you know, San Francisco and even Arizona playing well, but I believe in Matt Stafford. Obviously, Puka Nacua was a little banged up heading into that matchup. Kyron Williams only rushed for 65 yards. But I'll say this, Ben, the defense now is starting to have an identity, right? You know, they're holding opposing offenses to field goals as opposed to touchdowns in the red zone. They've done it now in 3 straight weeks. Granted, DK Metcalf and that Seattle offense, you know, Metcalf being hurt and that offense not the same that it was at the start of the year helps that. But still, you're getting a better defensive effort. And as long as you get that moving forward, you're going to be there with Matt Stafford. And barring any major injury, this is definitely a playoff caliber team. And I'll say it, they're worth a 32-1 shot to start, of yesterday's action to potentially win the NFC Championship.
You are a Rams guy through and through. That number now, Joe, 32-1, has become still 32-1. But a big win for the Rams. They cover as a slight road favorite, laying a 1.5 in the Northwest. 3 interceptions out of Geno Smith, including one that was taken back 103 yards, the NFL's longest play of the season by Cam Kitchens. Again, not great out of Geno, kind of spoiling a career day out of Jackson Smith and Jigba as well. Elsewhere around the NFC West, there's only one team, Lacey Guy, that is above 500. The Arizona Cardinals. They are 5-4, 29-9. The victory against a lifeless Bears team. Arizona wins, covers as a 1.5 favorite, under 44.5. The Bears did not score an offensive touchdown. They had just 241 total yards. Joey wondered how Chicago would respond to losing in Hail Mary fashion the week prior. It turns out the response is gutless. Matt Eberflus better be looking around and wondering when he's got to start packing the bags.
Yeah, get the electrical pads, shock this team a little bit. You know what I mean? Call, bang! They need a little kick in the ass right now because I saw DJ Moore and that offense just sputter. DJ Moore now walking through the motions. All of a sudden, players are starting to get agitated. Locker room, there is no chemistry anymore. That's a bad sign for Matt Eberflus. Could be dead man walking in Chicago.
Yeah, listen, not great. Tyreek Stevenson was demoted, left practice when he heard he was demoted earlier in the week. The Bears players are rightfully blaming the coaches. This coaching staff is ruining talent. Get them out. Get them out now. That's all I'll say. We'll set the stage for Monday night up next here on FFC.
Yeah, it's getting cooler.
Football weather is here.
Stay tuned for all the latest odds, strategies, and info. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Weather experts are keeping a close eye on a low-pressure system in the Western Caribbean that figures to impact the U.S. later this week, though to what extent remains uncertain.
With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg.
The system, now known as Potential Tropical Storm 18, prompted the governments of the Cayman Islands and Jamaica to issue a hurricane watch and tropical storm warning, respectively. AccuWeather said 18 may strengthen into a tropical storm today, earning the name Rafael. Unionized factory workers at Boeing are voting today whether to accept a contract offer or to continue their strike, which has lasted more than 7 weeks and shut down production of most Boeing passenger planes. A vote to ratify the contract would clear the way for the aerospace giant to resume airplane production and bring in much-needed cash. If members of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers vote for a third time to reject Boeing's offer, it would plunge the company into further financial peril and uncertainty.
I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Lowe's honors our military community this Veterans Day and every day. To say thank you, verified military members, veterans, and their spouses get 10% off everyday purchases, plus free silver key status with My Lowe's Rewards. It's our way of showing our gratitude to the brave people who have and continue to serve our country. Learn more now at Lowes.com/military. 10% discount can't be combined with another offer. Exclusions, terms, and conditions apply. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at Lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds, which could be life-changing. I mean, you could put that money towards that zero-turn lawnmower you've always wanted. And after using its edge-shaping technology to meticulously sculpt the face of the Mona Lisa into your grass, you'll become the undisputed king of Saturday morning lawn care, leaving your neighbor and sworn enemy Gary to question his place in the delicate neighborhood ecosystem. And it's all because you could save money switching at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states.
Ask any player and they'll tell you any advantage is important.
That's where we come in.
SportsGrid delivers gaming strategies and analysis 7 days a week.
The winning edge.
It's your advantage to more winning
more often.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on FFC, it is Football Full Circle. Lacey, one final game from Sunday before we preview Monday night between the Chiefs and the Buccaneers. The Commanders, just a really good football team. Now 7-2 this year, covering in all 7 victories, including on the road yesterday in MetLife against the Giants, 27-22. Washington covers as a 3.5-point road favorite. A total in the mid-40s does sky over. Daniel Jones threw his first touchdown pass at home in MetLife since January 1st, 2023. Nearly 2 years, 6 straight home games without a touchdown pass that was snapped yesterday. But, Joe, it comes in a losing effort. Not much going for the G-Men. They haven't covered in 4 straight. They've been a dog in 24 straight. They're 11-12-1 against the spread in those 24 consecutive games as an underdog. Meanwhile, Jaden Daniels has the Commanders cooking.
Yeah, again, this is more about Dan Quinn and that defense coming around. Jaden Daniels playing like Rookie of the Year, and a team that has a great identity and a great future with Jaden Daniels at the helm. I mean, he was a winner in college, certainly a winner in the NFL, has transformed this organization from being a doormat and a constant loser to a winner. Now, forget wild card. They are toe-to-toe with the Philadelphia Eagles to potentially challenge for an NFC East championship. They're 10-1 to win the NFC championship. I wouldn't buy in just because of how young they are. Still give the edge to the Detroit Lions and that veteran leadership. But who's to say that on any given Sunday, we saw Jordan Love go toe-to-toe with Dallas and almost knock off San Francisco last year. This is a similar situation in Washington, playing great football.
Yeah, absolutely so, Joe. More than 200 yards, 2 touchdowns for Jaden Daniels, both to scary Terry McLaurin, who, by the way, in the opening Sunday of November, already has 6 receiving scores this year. That's tied for second most around the NFL. Joe, in his previous 5 seasons, you always felt for Terry McLaurin did not have consistent quarterback play in Washington despite his talent. His most receiving touchdowns in a season, his rookie campaign was 7. He is going to break through that number here very soon. The Commanders 7-2, still in the top spot in the NFC East, although the Eagles are closing ground. All right, Lacey Guy, let's transition now to Monday Night Football to end out Week 9. And when tonight ends and Week 9 comes to a close, that's it for the opening half of this season. And the only team that remains undefeated is Kansas City, the 2-time reigning Super Bowl champs. The Chiefs host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers tonight. 9.5-point spread, Joe, in favor of KC, over under 45.5. Let's start there. The Chiefs, by the odds makers' perspective, should not really struggle to get to 8-0. Joe, do you think the Chiefs are in any danger of suffering their first defeat of the season?
It's possible, and I only say that because it's Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay, right? I understand they didn't cover against Atlanta, and they're shorthanded from the offensive perspective with, Godwin and Evans being out, but it's still Baker Mayfield. And if anybody will take this game on his shoulders, it's certainly Baker that dueled with Pat Mahomes back in the day, Oklahoma and Texas Tech. They had one of the highest yardage games in the history of college football, putting up over, I believe, 1,100 yards. So, yeah, I would take the 9.5 tonight. I'm certainly going to be on Tampa Bay with the points. The outright win, that's a different story. But who's to say that you can't get it, especially coming off a rivalry game with the Raiders? Actually, 2, if you think about it, San Francisco and then the Raiders, and now an emotional potential letdown spot with Tampa Bay, an undermanned Tampa Bay team coming to Arrowhead.
So you're on the Buccaneers getting 9.5 points. It makes sense, right? When you look at Tampa last year, opening year with Baker Mayfield, 9-4 ATS as an underdog, 6 outright victories. They started off this year winning outright in both of their first 2 games as an underdog, now have not covered in their last 3 as a dog. 5 consecutive overs, Joe, for Tampa. A team that offensively has scored at least 30 points in 4 straight, but has allowed at least 26 or 27 points in 5 straight games. So you can see why they have been playing to the over. 45 in a hook is that total. How much offense do you think we see tonight in Arrowhead?
I would lean to the over. Again, I think that, if you look at Tampa Bay right now, I just feel like if the game plays over, that means Baker's in a rhythm, right? If Baker's in a rhythm, you have a shot. And he's got a great relationship with Cade Otton. They didn't post a number for Trey Palmer. I expect him to step up with Shepard and Jalen McMillan being hurt. So again, I would much rather see a higher scoring game if you're back in Tampa. And I know that sounds crazy, but that's just the case, because then that to me means Tampa Bay's moving the football. If we get an ugly game, more times than not, Kansas City's just going to choke you out and win that matchup. It's going to be ugly. They'll find a way to grind it out. But Pat Mahomes statistically hasn't been putting up great numbers. So you would say the edge would benefit Baker and that offense if it's a higher scoring game.
Yeah,
So
no
I'll take
doubt about
over.
it, Joe. But yeah, Kansas City's defense has been elite this year, much like last year when the offense was slow to start until the postseason. It was that Chiefs defense led by Steve Spagnuolo that was keeping them in games. Third best scoring defense now in 2024, allowing just 17.6 points per game as well. Lisa, guy, if you had to look at the prop markets tonight, what would get your attention or maybe your best bet?
Well, I'm waiting for a prop on Trey Palmer. They haven't put it out, but at plus 390, 370 in that area for anytime touchdown. I do like Otten over his number. I think it's 53.5. If we're looking Kansas City, I'm taking a shot. Xavier Worthy, you get this guy, right? He's got to start making plays in the passing attack. 50, 60 plus at plus money in the area of plus 230. That's where I'm going. I'm not looking Kelsey. I'm not looking any of the running backs like Kareem Hunt right now. It's Xavier Worthy just because I think he's beaten down. You're getting good value with the numbers. Give me Worthy to break out tonight.
Kareem Hunt has scored 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games for KC. He's minus 190 to hit pay dirt. Again, of course, a huge game for Travis last week in Las Vegas. I think DeAndre Hopkins might make some sense as well, over 44.5. I also expect a lot of touchdowns to be thrown tonight. Baker Mayfield leads the NFL 21, but has thrown 7 INTs in the last 3. Mahomes, multiple touchdowns last week against Las Vegas, but a pick in all 7 games this year for Kansas City as well. Some college football thoughts next.
The boys of summer become the champions of fall. The World Series is on its way. And SportsGrid brings you every angle. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channels dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and SiriusXM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Money Line at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right. For about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. That's 800-797-1292.
Think of us as your cool roommate that has this innate gift of somehow always picking winners and never bugs you about doing the dishes or paying rent. Sports gaming strategies and information 24/7. Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
The opening Saturday in November of the 2024 college football season brought some chaos that perhaps we expected around Halloween weekend. 7 ranked teams go down on Saturday. Some upset as home favorites, laying at least 10 points. Lacey Guy, though, we start, of course, with the top 5 tilt, our 4th top 5 matchup of the season in Happy Valley on Saturday. We knew the narrative would continue for one head coach for one of the two programs between number 3 Penn State and number 4 Ohio State. It was not so happy in Happy Valley for the home team, Penn State and James Franklin. Ohio State wins 20-13, covering as a 3.5-point road favorite in State College. James Franklin now just 1-10 against the Buckeyes, just 1-13 against AP top 5 foes, 3-18 straight up against AP top 10 opponents. Joe, and Penn State has not been expected to win a game in the last few seasons. They have done exactly that and at least lived up to expectation by never winning a game. 0-5 straight up as an underdog since the start of 2022. The Buckeyes, they are now 7-1, covering as a 3.5-point favorite in State College.
Yeah, that game was won in the trenches, Ben, by the offense and defensive lines of Ohio State. And, credit, Ohio State for weathering the storm. They were down 10-0 in that matchup. You saw the pick 6 by Will Howard, throws it, really gets the crowd involved in the game. But, we talked about it in the pregame. Drew Aller had to answer the bell, number 1. He was a little bit banged up. But number 2, in order to win that game from an offensive perspective, Penn State needed to run the football consistently. Singleton and Allen were taken out of that game continuously in the third and fourth quarters. They were in long third down situations, couldn't sustain a drive when it mattered most. And again, it's the same old situation with James Franklin and Penn State. If you play it straight up, you know you're going to lose because of the talent. Yes, Penn State gets elite talent, but Ohio State gets better talent. They have better speed on the perimeter, a more athletic and better quarterback, more consistent quarterback. And I had answers about Will Howard. He didn't play elite, but he played better than Drew Aller to win that matchup. It's the same old thing. You have to take shots in big matchups. You have to break tendency. And when you're up 10-0, that's where you have to be more aggressive as opposed to dialing it back and hoping that you hold on to a victory.
Multiple red zone turnovers for both teams in this game that kind of changed the scoring perspective early on. Drew Aller, 12 of 20 for $146 and an interception. Only 120 yards on the ground, and most of that was Tyler Warren, the tight end. That's never a good thing. 270 total yards. Penn State had 3 red zone trips on Saturday. Ohio State's red zone defense continues to be the best in the country. They allowed just 3 points, and they took the football away a time or 2. Joe, not the recipe for Penn State, who suffers their first loss of the year. Ohio State, though, a huge victory for the Buckeyes that should keep them on track, maybe even a play in the Big Ten championship game. They are now co-favorites alongside Oregon, each at even money, plus 100. Here's the reality for the Nittany Lions, though. They're going to be a hefty favorite in their final 4 games of the year. Penn State is going to get to the college football playoff more than likely, even if they do not have a signature win on the resume to back that up. Oregon does. Lacey Guy, they go into Ann Arbor. They win 38-17. Cover is a 14.5-point favorite against the Maize and Blue. The Ducks have been dominant. No covers in their first 2 Big Ten games. They've now covered in 4 straight.
Yeah, killer instinct. Again, that was an opportunity for a letdown spot. Michigan ran the football a little bit, better than they have in recent weeks. They were in a position, put up 10 points early in the first half. They cut it to 11, had an opportunity to cut it to 7 with about 6 minutes left, and Oregon just closed the door, and then they took over. They had no problem tacking on that late touchdown to win by 21 and get the cover. That is the killer instinct that Dan Lanning has built. He has one of the best quarterbacks in the nation in Dylan Gabriel. Jordan James and that offensive line and the rushing attack are coming on, and all of a sudden the defense, very difficult, right? No. They play great red zone defense. They force turnovers. What more can you ask for out of the Ducks? In my opinion, I said it time and time again, best team in the Big Ten.
Best team in the Big Ten, Joe, and maybe the number 1 team in the country. Georgia struggles with Florida, and even a third-string quarterback before the Bulldogs finally scores some late touchdowns. We saw a bunch of teams lose their first game of the year as well. Pitt and Iowa State. An interesting time in CFP. He's Joe Lisi. I'm Ben Stevens. Football Full Circle returns tomorrow, noon Eastern.
Now you've done it. You found the advantage for gaming, odds, and more. But we call it the winning edge for short. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.